Hello and thank you for joining us on Business Incorporated. I am Bisi Adebayo. Coming up on today's show, the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, United Kingdom, to hold Nigerian International Bankers Conference. In Egypt's urban consumer price inflation falls to an annual 13.5% in July. Plus, South African construction company Murray & Roberts drops plans for a potential merger with rival Avang. Well, the show begins with intraday numbers from the stock markets, and here in Nigeria, the all-share index is pointing 0.16% southwards at noon, and all the other markets we track in Africa are up a lot line, and the South African index is 0.14% higher, while Egypt was also 0.56% up at intraday. The Kenyan Burse also finished Wednesday's session in positive territory. And it's looking like a bloody Thursday at the Middle East markets, with all the major indices in the red at noon. The Abu Dhabi index is the heaviest loser with over 1%, while the Dubai index is 0.97% down, also at midday Nigerian time. In Qatar, the index was 0.75% lower, and the Saudi Arabian index at 0.24% negative. And European stocks hovered around the flight line on Thursday amid a deepening U.S.-China trade dispute and a flurry of corporate earnings. Well, let's get more on today's market performance from Conrad Wilson at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Conrad, so more political trouble for the world's financial markets as the U.S. imposes a new sanction on Russia. And the reason, of course, is that those nerve-aided attacks in Britain, which allegedly were actually performed by Russian agents. What's the effect on the markets?
Well, the most immediate effect, of course, is in Russia itself. The Russian ruble, the currency of the nation, has fallen to the lowest level in 2 years. On the stock market in Moscow, the benchmark index is down 2%. Mostly hit in Moscow's trading, of course, are the banks, because the sanctions, they provide that new sovereign debt and banking transactions in Russia might be sanctioned or will be sanctioned. And also the shares in Aeroflot, the national airline of Russia, is down up to 12%, because especially if the United States decides to even escalate those sanctions against Russia, then the idea is there that the Russian airline might be prohibited from flying to American destinations. This is an opportunity, this is a possibility, the fact that America even imposes stricter sanctions against Russia if Russia fails to prove that it really has stopped using chemical weapons. Here in Western Europe, well, the effect, you can see it quite nicely if you look at the German DAX. The index here is trading around the flat line again. It's another jittery trading day. Also because, you know, the Russia topic has sort of reignited concerns about emerging economies in general. Russia's economy is not the only one struggling. In Turkey, for example, the currency there, the Turkish lira, has fallen to the lowest in history today again. Many concerns are there about the way of the Turkish economy, and also, of course, about many of those loans that companies have and that consumers have, because those loans are often dollar denominated. So the decline of the currency in Turkey, but also in Russia, that's a big problem for companies and citizens that have loans denominated in dollars. That is likely to become a big problem, and that has increased the negative bias on the markets in general towards emerging economies.
Now, German drug maker Fresenius Kabi is suing authorities in the U.S. state of Nebraska in order to hold a planned execution there. Now, the company claims that the U.S. state has illegally obtained the company's drugs to use for the lethal injection procedure. How is this being discussed on the trading floors?
Well, if you talk to people here, first of all, they say that it is really a horrible topic to discuss. The nations of the European Union have given up the death penalty years ago because a majority of people here think that it's a horrible thing to do for a government and an inhumane thing to do to execute people and apply the death penalty. In terms of the company, well, the company itself says that this is likely to be very bad for its reputation. And that's an opinion that most people here are having as well. And also, obviously, investors, the shares in Fresenius are down no more than 2% today. In terms of the chances of Fresenius to really get through with its lawsuit in the United States, well, very few people here believe that it will, despite the fact that the company has tried to control the distribution of its product in the United States by making contracts with the distributors. But obviously the state of Nebraska has the opinion that its law is above those contracts. And in effect, if you imagine a US court taking into consideration the point of view of a state of the United States against the point of view of a German company, it's quite likely that the point of view of the American state will prevail.
And finally, Conrad, the sports company Adidas has reported earnings for the last quarter. Of course, it was not so much of a success for Adidas in terms of the just concluded Football World Cup. I mean, most of the teams sponsored by the company had to leave the tournament early. Now, does this show in the numbers?
No, not at all, BC. The numbers were surprisingly strong. Earnings and growth in the last quarter was nearly twice as high as the average analyst's expectations. So the shares in Adidas are big gainers here today in Frankfurt trading. They're up 9% at the moment. And the company actually says the Football World Cup was very successful, despite the fact that the two teams which played the final, France and Croatia, both were equipped by Nike. And despite the fact that Germany, the previous, world champion, sponsored by Adidas, had to leave the tournament so early. But this was not negative for the worldwide sales that Adidas managed to make in the second quarter, especially in the United States and China. The sales by online sales were really strong. And the outlook now for the whole year results are positive, and that's why investors are really buying the share today.
Well, thanks a lot, Conrad, for those updates. And we'll do this one more time tomorrow.